Welcome back to another Family History Friday video with the Butler Area Public Library. This week we are going to look at Sanborn Fire Insurance Maps as a genealogy tool. These maps were developed to help evaluate fire risk for properties in cities and towns, but because of all the information that they contain, they can be a really useful clue to just learn more about the homes or businesses that your ancestors lived in and owned. So in this video, we'll talk about where you can find these maps in the library and online. We'll look at how you navigate them and use their indexes, and then we will dig into the pages of the maps themselves to learn all about the clues that are hidden within. So let's get started. Sanborn Fire Insurance Maps were developed in the 1860s, and they are a metric for determining the amount of fire risk on a particular property. So they are color-coded illustrated maps of cities, and they can be used to determine the size, shape, and construction materials of a particular property, the number of exterior windows and doors, the roofing material, the width of the streets that they are on, house numbers, block numbers, street names, gas and water lines, anything that might influence the amount of risk that is involved with a particular piece of property. They typically cover downtown areas and city centers and then the immediately adjacent residential areas. And the newer maps tend to show larger and larger portions of the city as the population density spreads. Sanborn Maps can help illuminate your research in a few ways. So if you're doing a house history of a property that's in a city, they can be very useful even in narrowing down a smaller time frame of when the house itself was constructed and the history of the neighborhood around it. They can tell you address changes, both in the numbering schematic of the street itself and if the street name underwent any changes. And it can help you trace physical changes, the construction of the property, any additions that were put on it, any materials that were used, any usage changes for the building. So was it a store, an office, a dwelling? Was it used as a garage? Was it used as a stable? All of these things can be labeled on Sanborn Maps. If you want to utilize Sanborn Maps to enhance your research, there are a few places that you can find them. One is, of course, your local library. The Butler Area Public Library has select local Sanborn Maps available on both microfilm and in print. Our microfilm collection ranges from 1886 to 1930, though it is important to note that Sanborn Maps are not produced every year. They're typically made every 5 to 10 years. And our print edition is just from 1930. We have one original 1930 map in our archive. Meanwhile, you can find many more maps online. There are two places that you'll want to check. The first is the Library of Congress, which has maps from all across the United States. The other is the Penn State Digital Map Collection. These images are Pennsylvania only, but they do cover the full state. And you will find Sanborn Maps for Butler, Lindora, Evans City, Zelienople, Slippery Rock, Shakora, Herman, Petrolia, Harmony, and Mars between these locations. On microfilm, most of our maps are from the city of Butler, Lindora, Herman, East Butler, and Shakora. But online you can find all of those as well as the other locations that I mentioned. I will include links to the online map locations in the video description. Having these maps available online is really a strength, not only for ease of access, because we can view them anytime with an internet connection, but because they are color copies. One drawback to our microfilm Sanborn Map collection is that they are reduced to grayscale, and a lot of the detail in Sanborn Maps come from the color coding. So it is really useful to have some of these maps available digitally online. The Library of Congress's digital Sanborn Map collection is quite large. It has around 32,000 maps in the collection, and again, that is because it covers all of the United States. You can use some refinement tools on the left-hand side of the page to narrow down either by time period or location, or what you can do is simply use the search box at the top of the page. I'm simply going to type in Butler as I want to look for maps from Butler, Pennsylvania. And once I've hit enter, you can see that now we have a selection of maps specific to Butler, Pennsylvania. There's several date ranges available. We can see we have maps from 1886, 1906, 1891, 1911, 1921, and 1896, just as a start. To look at any map that we find on the Library of Congress site, you will simply click the name of the map, and that will bring you to a page with a little more citation information. To interact with the map itself, you will simply want to click on the map image, which will show you thumbnails of all the pages available for this year. Sanborn maps are divided into sheets, so they are bound multi-page maps. To navigate through this multi-page map, you will click on any of the thumbnails to start. So if I click on the first page, that is page 1 of the map, and then I can use one of two sets of arrows, either the ones up here where it says pages, or the arrows that are overlaid on the image viewer itself here to navigate one image at a time. So there, now I'm on page 2. If I click the right arrow again, I'm on page 3. If I need to jump quite a ways ahead, I can use this pull down menu here in the left-hand corner to select a number and then hit go. The Penn State Sanborn Fire Insurance Map collection also has its own collection page, and you can either search the collection by keyword here, or by clicking any of the city or town names on the alphabetical list of Pennsylvania locations that they provide. If we use their search box and type in Butler, we will see a list of maps, again starting with maps from the city of Butler itself. But then as we scroll down, we can see hits for Slippery Rock, Harmony, Evans City, and a number of other locations throughout Butler County. To interact with any of the maps in the Penn State collection, you'll start by clicking on the name of the map. And then once you're on the page for that specific map, this one is that 1906 map for the city of Butler, you'll see that they start by giving you a larger image of the first page and then thumbnails for all subsequent pages that you can click on. To zoom in on the map, you will want to click on the little icon of two diagonal arrows in the corner of that page image. And then once that opens, you can click to zoom in. You can drag to move the map around. To go from page to page, you can simply use the arrows on either side of the map. So if I click the right arrow, that will bring me to the second page. Or if I need to jump pretty far ahead, let's say I need to go to page 10, I can click on the thumbnail here for sheet 10. And now we can see that this is our page 10 image. Sanborn Maps have a key to help you interpret the information and abbreviations on them. Typically, you can find one at the front of a Sanborn map, but you can also just do a simple Google search for Sanborn Map key and find a number of examples. A big thing is the color coding of building materials. The main three that you will want to be aware of are blue, which is for stone or concrete buildings, pink for brick, and yellow for wood framed. You may sometimes also find a combination of colors, the main one being a yellow building with a pink outline, meaning it's a wood frame building with a brick veneer. You will sometimes also find a pink building with a yellow outline, meaning that is a brick-lined building with a wood-framed exterior. There are some other abbreviations that you can find on the key that I will point out as we go through a few maps. Let's talk about how you find the right page in these multi-page Sanborn maps by using either the color-coded map or the index of street and landmarks. The first page of the map is going to give you some keys and an index. And you can see that once we've clicked on any thumbnail, we can click to zoom in and out, and we can click and hold and drag the map around to interact with it. You'll find two different kinds of keys on each map. The first is an aerial view of the entire city with these color-coded spots overlaid on it. These coordinate with the sheets of the map itself. So this pink area is sheet 4. This blue one next to it is sheet or page 5. This small brown area off to the side is page 6. So if you know exactly where on the map the street or the house is that you're looking for, you can simply find the page number this way. But if you aren't exactly sure where a street is on the map, you can use the index. Typically, the index for a Sanborn map will include an alphabetical listing of streets. So here we can see Bluff, Brown, Center, Clay, etc. And then if there is a very large street, you might get multiple entries. In this instance, for the diamond, house numbers 1 through 18 on the diamond are on page 3, whereas building numbers 19 through 34 are on page 2. Same thing here for North and South Main Street. Different segments of the street are on different pages, but that is how you find the correct page number through this index. There's also a section of special landmarks. We can see here that we have some churches, some hotels, some schools, and factories. So you might even check by landmark in this alphabetical list to find the page number that will be featured on. As towns grow and as their populations grow, the Sanborn maps grow with them. So as we're looking at the April 1886 edition of the Butler Sanborn Map, there's a note at the top that the population is 5,000, and the covered areas of town really are just downtown and a little bit on Center Avenue. So there's only 6 pages in this map. But coming forward to the edition from 1906, Butler's population is now 17,500 people. And as we can see, there's a much wider area covered on this map, even including Lindora. And as we can tell both from this page 1 of 37 index in the corner and the numbering on our colored areas itself, the 1906 edition of the map now takes up 37 pages. It's considerably larger. Let's look at how one would find an address on a Sanborn map. Now, you might have an address that you're curious about from a census record, from a city directory, from a deed. There's all kinds of places you might find an early street address. In this example, we are going to use the 1910 Polk City Directory for Butler, and we are going to look at properties owned by James C. Boyle. We can see him here. He owns Boyle's Private Hospital, which is an eye, ear, nose, and throat hospital, which is at 121 East Cunningham Street. And then we can also see that his house is at 334 North McCain Street. So let's look at both of those. The closest Sanborn map to that 1910 city directory is the 1911 Sanborn map. So let's start there. In this particular map, the index of street names is at the back, so I'm going to go to the image of the last page. Let's start by looking for his house first, which was on McCain Street. So 334 North McCain would fall into this number range here, 200 to 349, and that is on page 7. I'm going to use the image option here to choose number 7 and hit go rather than go page by page for 30-some pages. So here we can see page 7 from the Sanborn map. We know it's page 7 because there's a large 7 printed in the upper right-hand corner. Also, pay attention to the compass rose that is printed on each page. Sometimes north is not at the top of the page. In this instance, north is the right-hand side of our page. If we zoom in on North McCain Street here in the center, these numbers that are written on the outside edges of the blocks in the street itself are your house numbers. So we can see 334 North McCain right here. It is this dwelling. The D written in the center of the building stands for dwelling, so a private house. We can see that it is pink, meaning the main house itself is made from brick, but that it has a porch in the front that is wood frame and a porch on the side that is wood frame, as well as an outbuilding that is wood framed. The 2 inside the pink area means that it is a 2-story house. We can see a 2 in this porch, which probably indicates that that is a 2nd floor balcony, and a 1 written in the outbuilding, indicating that that is just a 1-story structure. Returning to our street index, let's find the listing for the medical office on East Cunningham. So the building number was 121 East Cunningham. And we actually see that there's 2 sections that start with the 100s, but we can see that the top one are the even numbers and the second listing are the odds. So we want this second number that goes for addresses 101 through 233 East Cunningham, which is page 12. We go to 12. Here we can see page 12 in the corner, and East Cunningham runs across the top of the page. And zooming in, we can see 121 East Cunningham here, and it's actually labeled as a hospital, private. It's a complex building. It's 2 stories in the middle with a 1-story wing on the back and a 1-story druggist on the front, as well as 1-story offices in the front. We can see that it is next to a number of businesses, including some other offices, the Elks Club, which has a wholesale confectionery on the 1st floor, the Armory and Dance Hall over the Majestic Theater, and a number of other buildings. So, of course, since we're in downtown, the map is a little more complex. Looking around at it, there's a few other things that we can learn. This alleyway is 20 feet wide. That's what that 20 is there for. We can see these hashed lines indicating where there are pipes running underground. And if we look on the other side of the alley, heading to the left here, we can see that although the buildings are numbered sequentially in the 100 and teens, these 3 have D, F, and E written over top of them. That means that those are recently renumbered to 111, 113, and 115. What if we want to learn more about this property and its history? We can look at other editions of Sanborn Maps for Butler to see how the building itself might change, how its addresses could change, and how the neighborhood itself has evolved. If I zoom out on our map, we can see that our hospital, our yellow framed hospital here on East Cunningham, has South Main Street running to the west and South McCain Street to the east. And we're fairly close to the Diamond Park down here. Because I know where this block is, I can pretty easily find it on the map in any other Sanborn map. So this was our 1911 map. I'm going to jump backwards to the Sanborn map that was published in 1906. And although we could use our street index to find the East Cunningham property the way we did before, this time I'm just going to use our aerial view of downtown. And zooming in, we can see here's the diamond, here's East Cunningham Street, here's Main Street running wide down the center, and here's McCain. So we know that the medical office should be right here on this block. It's inside this area that's colored in green with a 4 in the center. That means it's on page 4. So I'm simply going to go to page 4. There's our 4 in the corner. And here we can see East Cunningham between McCain and Main Street. And there's 121 East Cunningham. Now, 5 years earlier in time, we can see that this looks a lot different. The middle center bit of our building is there, but it appears that Dr. Boyle added on to it. We can see that it is labeled as D for a dwelling, so this was a residential home. It has the 2-story central part of the building with the 1-story wing in the back, but none of the front stuff was there. So sometime between 1906, what we're looking at here, and 1911, the building was expanded to add the area for the drugstore and the offices in the front, and it was converted to a private hospital. And remember our 3 storefronts here with the double numbers, the 111, 113, and 115 street addresses and the sort of arbitrary letters that they were assigned. When we go backward to 1906, we can see those 3 storefronts have those letters there, their former addresses. We can keep tracking this transition backward as long as we have other maps to look at. So here is a Sanborn map from 1901, and when we look at the section for 121 East Cunningham Street here, we see the very familiar outline of the house that would become our private hospital because it's taking up almost the same footprint as we saw here in the 1906 map. But we can see that most of the block are private homes indicated by these Ds. They are dwellings. So what we're looking at between 1901 and 1911 is really a rapid development of this block adjacent to downtown. So here we see it being basically all residential. 5 years later, most of those homes have been demolished and replaced with the Majestic Theater, the Armory, and the Dance Hall, and the other businesses there, although our property owned by Mr. Boyle eventually is still a private home. And then by 1911, that transition is basically complete, and we see that house has been converted into a private hospital and some other storefronts. Going in the other direction, we can start here at our 1911 Sanborn map, which shows our private hospital owned by Dr. Boyle. And we can come forward in time to the 1921 Sanborn map. And there we can see a number of dramatic changes. So it's no longer our private hospital. It's now an automobile showroom on the first floor. Somewhere in the second side of the building is a ladies' wear shop. We can see there are 3s here indicating that a 3rd floor has been added over the 2nd story part, and a 2nd floor added over the back wing that had initially only been 1 story. And the street numbering schematic has changed yet again. So where previously we had 3 storefronts that were numbered 119 and a half, 121, 123 back in 1911, now on this 1921 map, we have just 2 storefronts, and they are 119 and 121. So we can see a lot of subtle changes over time. And if we're wanting to eventually match up modern day storefronts and modern day addresses to these historic details, it's important that we can track all of these subtle changes over time. We can watch a similar, though sometimes a little more subtle, progression in the residential neighborhoods as well. So this is 334 North McCain Street as it appeared in 1891, the earliest Sanborn map in which this section of the neighborhood appears. So the basic building we are familiar with from earlier in the lesson remains. It's a 2-story brick dwelling house with some porches, but over time we can watch as that property and the neighboring properties evolve. So starting here in 1891, when we jump to 1896, is when the carriage building in the back has been built, somewhere in the 5-year gap there. And as we move along, we can see that although 334 North McCain doesn't change too much, here by 1906 they've added a second outbuilding in the back. In 1911, there aren't a lot of changes, though the neighbor's carriage house has certainly changed, as have some of these other residences. And then by 1921, they've torn down the one outbuilding and moved it to be a different shed aligned behind the house, and the carriage house is gone and replaced with a 2-story automobile garage. And we can see that the former carriage house at the neighboring property is now a full auto repair center with a welding department and electric and motors. Sanborn maps also give us a look at the industrial work that was going on in Butler. So if you had ancestors involved in any of the major companies, for example, here is a 1901 view of the Standard Plate Glass Company. And you can see not just how large the complex was, but if you zoom in, you can actually see the different departments, the grinding hall, the polishing room, the ovens, iron chimneys, the annealing ovens, and the casting hall. So if you know what department they worked in or just want a better picture of the work they were doing, you can get a really fascinating bird's eye view of the plant by looking at these maps. Similarly, here is a 1921 look at the Standard Steel Car Company, which so many people in Butler and Lindora worked for. We can see just how big the complex was, and again, the divisions between the main shop here in the center, the paint shops, the enameling houses, machine shops, even the cafeteria and the general offices here on the left-hand side. And we can see Hanson Avenue running alongside the plant. And if you notice in parentheses here, it says Pierce Avenue. That's because it wasn't named Hanson Avenue until closer to when this map was done. If you look at it on the 1911 map, it will be called Pierce Avenue. But running along Hanson there, we can see the tenement houses known as Red Row. So if you had any ancestors who lived on Red Row in Lindora, here's an idea of how that was laid out.